I am a person who absolutely hates yard work. I despise it. I cannot stand it. And I know for some of you, that may be your thing. You know, you love it. It's a hobby of yours. You have a yard that looks like a botanical garden, and, you know, you've got grass that looks like a, golf course or something like that. I find people like you really, really annoying if you are one of those people. And for some reason, I always end up with neighbors who are like that. I hate yard work. If it is your thing, fine. May 1,000 flowers bloom for you. But I just don't care, right? For me, you can concrete my yard and paint it green, and I am good, all right? When we lived in Dayton, all of that to say, when we lived in Dayton, there was, in our yard, out by this tree, this one singular tulip that would come up every year. Obviously, going back to a previous owner, because I didn't put the thing out there. But every single year, this tulip would come up, and for some strange reason, I always felt this compulsion that I had to mow around this tulip. You know, like I had to preserve the remnant for some reason. This is obviously some carryover from a day when it was very nicely landscaped and all of that. And so I just felt restricted and constrained and felt like I had to mow around this tulip. And it was a pain, but I did it. For 3 years, I mowed around this tulip, enslaved to what was, bound to the past. And that's where some of you are today. See, God has something next for you in your life, but for that to happen, some of you need to let go of what has been. You need to let go of the things that have been holding you back, because in your life, what you're doing is you are mowing around this tulip, and you are just enslaved to what has been, to what you have been, stuck in the past, locked into what was. And I think Jesus has a question for you this morning. And it's a question that comes from the Gospel of John in chapter 5 and verse 1. Look with me, if you would, to John chapter 5 and verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The pool of Bethesda was a gathering place for those who were sick, for those who were disabled in some way, because they had this belief that every so often an angel would come down to this particular pool and would stir the waters. And whenever the water was stirred in a certain way, that was a sign that the angel had come and was present. And when the water was stirred, if you were the first one to get into the pool, then you would be healed of your malady, of your ailment, whatever it was. Well, one day Jesus passes through Jerusalem and he comes by this gathering of people who are all there hoping that this story is true, hoping that this is the day that they would see the water stirred and they would have their chance to finally be healed. And here in this crowd, Jesus encounters a man who has been an invalid for 38 years. And he asks him a question. Do you want to get well? Now, we grow up being told that there's no such thing as a dumb question, right? You heard that from parents, you heard that from teachers. There's no such thing as a dumb question. And then we grow up and we start working with people and we realize that, yes, Virginia, there are dumb questions. And not only do they exist, but their name is Legion, for they are many, right? As much as I believe that there are, in fact, dumb questions, I don't want to ever accuse Jesus of asking a dumb question, you know? But can we just be really, really honest and say that when Jesus asked this question, at least on the surface, it really seems kind of unnecessary? I mean, the guy's been an invalid for 38 years. Think about that. 38 years as an invalid, 38 years of being completely and totally dependent on other people, unable to care for yourself, unable to provide for yourself, unable to make a living. For 38 years, you have had absolutely no sense of security, no sense of hope. For 38 years, people have looked at you like you are less than a human being and somehow are under the judgment of God. That has been your life for 38 years. Do you really need to ask, do you want to get well? I mean, doesn't that seem kind of obvious? I mean, how could anyone say anything less than absolutely? You know, I would love to move beyond this tired and worn out existence. I am tired of what has been. I want to be free. I want to experience life as it should be and everything that could be. Absolutely, I want to get well. That's what we would assume. But the man's response helps us to see that the question was not as obvious as we might think. Do you want to get well? And his answer was, I have no one to help me get in the pool. Instead of simply saying, yes, I want to get well, the man immediately responds with the reason that he can't get well. I mean, it is fascinating to me that this man's first response is why things cannot change rather than his desire for things to change. He doesn't simply say, yes, I want to get well. No, he responds immediately with an excuse as to why he can't get well. In his mind, in his view, the reasons that he could not become well were much bigger than the possibility of being well. The excuses now held more power than his desire to be free. Do you want to get well? I can't, because. You know, sometimes the things that hold us back, that keep us from being whole and being healthy, that prevent us from being everything that God created us to be, that block us from living in the power and the grace of God's life and God's purpose for us, sometimes those things become so much a part of our identity and our experience that we can no longer envision a life without them. They become so much a part of who we are that we can no longer envision anything else. And so, like this man, we lay paralyzed, unable to see anything else as being possible. You see, he could no longer see himself as anything more than an invalid. It's who he was. And there was a reason, and we could even point to it and say, you know what, it seems like a legitimate reason. There was a reason that he could never be anything more. There was a reason that he could never be truly healed. It's who he was. Do you want to get well? You can't. I think Jesus is asking some of us this morning, do you want to get well? Do you want to be free from the stuff that has weighed you down? Do you want to be free from the things in your life that are stealing your joy? Do you want to be free from the things that are defeating you over and over again? Do you want to be free from all the stuff that has mired you in regret and in guilt? Do you want to get well? And the obvious answer would be yeah. You know, I want to be free from the past. I want to be free from the brokenness. I want to be free from all the stuff that seems to be tearing my life apart. I want to know a life of joy and peace, free from the shadows of what was. But instead, we say, I can't. There's nobody to help me in the pool. Do you want to get well? I can't. You see, I have failed so miserably, and I have fallen so many times, and I have tripped up over the same thing over and over again, and now it's just who I am. This stuff has so much power over me that there is no way for me to get out from under the guilt and the sense of regret. Do you want to get well? I can't. I can't. The struggles in my life and the struggles in our marriage and the mess that I've created, it has just gone on for so long. It is so much a part of my life that there is no way it can be undone. I can't. Do you want to get well? I can't. I have so many battles and so many hang-ups and so many habits, and I know that I'm not what I should be, but there's just no way it's going to change. It's my family history, it's my history, it's just how people see me. This is who I am. I think Jesus is asking some of us today, do you want to get well? Do you want to let go of what happened to you? Do you want to let go of what was done to you? Do you want to find healing from the past and what was and what took place? And do you want to find freedom from that so that you can move on to a new chapter, to a life of joy and new possibilities? Do you want to get well? And the obvious answer would be yeah. But we say, I can't. I can't. You see, you don't understand that person and what they did to me, that hurt me so deeply. And it wrecked my life. The scar is so deep that it is just a part of me. And there's no way that my life can ever be free of that, because my life was changed and it's never going to be the same again because of what they did. Do you want to get well? I can't. You see what happened, that conflict, that difficulty, that tragedy, you know what? It can't be undone. And I live with it every single day. I live with the unfairness, I live with the pain, I live with the injustice of it all, and the anger and the hurt and the sorrow and the grief. It is just part of who I am now, and it controls me, and I cannot let it go. I believe Jesus is asking some of us today, do you want to get well? Do you want to quit living on the sidelines, just walking through the motions of life without any meaning or purpose? You know, you sit on the sidelines of the church, you come in here, you put in an hour, and then you plow through 40 hours of work every week, but there isn't any meaning, there isn't any purpose. Do you want to get well? Do you want to live a life that makes a difference? And we say, I can't. I can't. You know what? I am just not gifted enough to make a difference. I can't do the things that other people do. There's nothing that I can offer that really matters to anyone. I am what I am. And so I'm just better off kind of on the sidelines. Do you want to get well? I can't. I'm not important enough. I'm not significant enough to make a difference in anyone's life. I have nothing to offer anyone. I have nothing to offer to the church. I have nothing to offer to the world. You know, I've been told that all my life. I have been treated that way all my life. It's just who I am. And I'm not worth much. And we accumulate this whole history of hurts and struggles and shortcomings and perceptions that tell us that we can never be anything more than what we are. We can never be anything more than an invalid by the pool. And some of us have been laying on our mat for 38 years, and that has become so much a part of our identity and so much a part of our experience that we can no longer see the hope or the possibility of actually being healed. And when asked if we want to get well, all we can do is point to our reasons and our excuses as to why we can't get well. Because we can't see anything anymore. You know what? God is doing a new work, and God is writing a new chapter, and he wants to write a new chapter in your life. He is calling you to what is next. But for you to experience that, you have to set aside the excuses that have paralyzed you. You have to set aside all of the reasons that we give for keeping moving forward, to not move forward. We have to set aside the excuses that are keeping us tied to the past and to the brokenness, keeping us bound to what has been and what we are right now. You know, we have to let go of the excuses and simply answer the question that Jesus asks. Because you see, Jesus didn't ask, why can't you get well? He asked, do you want to get well? He didn't ask this man, why can't you get well? He said, do you want to get well? He doesn't ask about the excuses or the reasons that have kept us from being well. And you know why he doesn't ask that? Because there is not one reason, there is not one excuse that is greater than the power of Jesus to work in your life. You see, that's what this story is telling us. That Jesus is bigger than the reasons and the excuses and the inabilities that we have allowed to define us and to control us and to shape our lives and to keep us stuck in the past and stuck in an unhealthy place and in unhealthy relationships. All of these reasons and excuses that keep us from experiencing God's best for our lives, Jesus is bigger than all of them. You know, Jesus looks at this man and he gives him this excuse. I can't get well because I have no one to help me into the pool. Jesus doesn't respond to that by saying, man, I'm sorry to hear that. That's too bad. That's rough. Jesus looks at him and says, get up. Get up. This malady, this paralysis that has oppressed you does not have to define you, so get up. The excuses and the reasons that scream out hopelessness, they don't have to have the last word, so get up. What has always been does not have to determine what you will be, so get up. And I think Jesus says to us, whatever hurt you have experienced in the past, you don't have to live there, so get up. Whatever failures you have had, whatever hang-ups and issues that you carry, I am greater than those things, so get up. Whatever you think of yourself, however little you see in yourself, I can do great things in you, so get up. Whatever has beaten you down, whatever has imprisoned you, whatever is keeping you on the sidelines of life, I am greater and I am bigger than those things, so get up. And the man had a choice. He could continue to hide behind his reasons and lay there paralyzed by the pool. Or he could get up and let the grace of Jesus work in his life. And you've got that same choice today. You can continue to lay in that place of paralysis, unhealthy and broken, or you can hear the word of Jesus say, get up. Do you want to get well? You know, the day came after about 3 years of mowing around a tulip. The day came when I looked at that thing that had come out once again. I mean, every year, this thing was like Lazarus just coming back from the grave. And I said, you know what? I'm done being bound to this thing. And I fired up my mower and I ran straight over that tulip. And I looked at that thing all chopped up, spread across the yard. And you know how you do something just kind of in a moment and impulse, and then you look back and you have this little twinge of regret? Yeah, I didn't have that at all. I ran over it again. I was like, this is awesome. There's this amazing sense of freedom that I am not going to be bound by what was. I am moving on. And you know what? Jesus wants to bring that freedom into your life, to set you free from the things that you have allowed to define you, to keep you imprisoned, to keep you from believing that you ever could be well, that you ever could be anything more. But we have to see beyond the excuses that are keeping us paralyzed. God has something next for you. But in order to take hold of what God has next, you have to be willing to let go of what has been. We have to let go of the reasons and excuses that have mired us down, that are keeping us from experiencing all that God has for us. Jesus isn't asking you today, why can't you get well? He simply asks, do you want to get well? And the question is, will you let it go? Will you get up? And will you move forward by the grace of Jesus? Let's bow our heads. And this morning, I really believe that Jesus is just asking that question of some of us. Do you want to get well? And for a long time, You've been making excuses, and you've accepted. You've accepted that paralysis, just being bound to the past and stuck where you are. It has become so much a part of your identity that you can't see anything else now. Jesus says to you, get up. You don't have to lay there. There is no reason, there is no excuse bigger than my grace. There is nothing greater than my power and my ability to work in your life. I will set you free, so get up and let my grace do its work. Let's stand together, and this morning as we sing, I just invite you to come because Jesus is asking, do you want to get well? And just like that man had to get up and respond to the call of Jesus, I invite you to take a step forward and say, I'm letting go. I'm letting go. I want to be well. So Jesus, set me free this morning. Put me in that place that I am ready to receive what's next for me. Lord, this morning, would you just help us to set aside the excuses and everything that would bind us and hold us in the past. Lord, help us to simply get up and come to you, believing that your grace will make us whole.